So Walmart has just done a redesign, or maybe let's call it a brand refresh. I think that's a more accurate term. Now, since they have over 250 million customers weekly, which is absolutely insane, and 10,000 physical stores, that's not something which you can go over lightly. Now, obviously, online this has caused a lot of controversy. There's people who don't see the value of it or if it was even worth spending the money on it, and there's some people who like it. Now, as someone who's kind of passionate about graphic design and branding, I kind of like it, and I want to show you the 5 things that have changed and I really like. So we're starting with the first one, which is the logo and the name. Now here's a little bit of a history about the logo. Throughout the years it has changed multiple times. We can see that it's gone from minimal to more complex to Western, with a hyphen, without a hyphen, to minimal again with that little spark. And ever since 2008 they've added that little spark to the logo and they're still sticking with it, which I think is great. Now the spark, which is the primary logo of the brand, is really important. And if you put it side by side with the older version, I get it why people say they don't really see the difference. But if you look closely, you'll see that there's been more rounded edges, it's been made a little bit bolder, and also the colors are more vibrant. Everything's put closer together and just adds for that minimal aesthetic feel to the logo, I think. Now looking back at it and comparing them side by side, I can see the old one was getting kind of outdated and needed a refresh, so I think they did that one really well here. Now of course a logo consists of 2 parts. We have the wording and the spark, so also the wording has been changed. If you compare those side by side again, you can see that the font has been changed as well. So the font is now more bold and also the color is a bit more vibrant and brighter. So similar to that spark, everything has gone through a little bit of a brand refresh. Now love it or hate it, I think this spark has become really important for the brand. It's almost that recognizable and iconic feel of the Walmart logo. It's important for a brand to have a simple icon or a version of the logo that you can easily use in packaging or any other materials that are touch points with the brand. Just look at this package delivery, for example. Its clean, bold look is very distinct and in my opinion it works better than the thin lines than it was before. Now these aspects are crucial for communication materials, so let's jump into some examples of how they want to use it. So here they call it the word mark and we see the Walmart logo. And as we scroll down, we can see how it can be used through the brand guidelines, for example. There's some white space, but what's important and I want to highlight is this primary color usage. If you have a new logo, it has to work on black, white, and as well the color backgrounds. So here we see an example with a white background and a colored logo, as well as the inverse or the blue background with a white logo. So if you have a logo, always make sure that it works on both sides of one of those brands or these colors. Now obviously there's also secondary colors to your brand. For example, here we have this darker tone of blue as well as images. So if you want to use your logo on an image, it has to be bold. If you use this very thin logo, it becomes very hard to read. So that's why I really like this bold font on the Walmart logo. It works really well with the aesthetic that I want to go for. Now to give you a quick idea of how important it is to have such guidelines available is that if I scroll down a little bit, here we see some word mark don'ts. Even though the primary colors are being used here, we can see that some of those who can't be used give a totally different feeling of the logo or the brand. For example, this one here, it uses the white with the yellow, which is primary color, both primary colors by the way. It totally doesn't give the Walmart feeling. If we look at the second one, this gives me more of a meta feeling or a Facebook feeling. While it even spells Walmart, it sometimes can give totally different contrasting feelings. So besides the wording and the logo, you can see that the colors are super important when you talk about a brand. And that's where we want to go to the next topic, which is the colors that have been changed. And the color palettes are obviously super important for a brand. This set of colors probably reminds you more of McDonald's, while this set of colors reminds you of Coca-Cola. And if I put these on the screen, you're very likely to think about Spotify, for example. Now Walmart definitely falls into that category with the blue, the yellow and the white as a brand color. So I like that they embraced the history of the company and they stuck to it. They didn't go for a complete overhaul of the branding, they kind of stuck to their values. But what they've done is they made the colors more vibrant and lively, and I think that was needed if you compare it to, for example, other brands in this modern digital age. If you look at the previous colors, they looked a bit more washed out, so these ones are very vibrant, very bright, and I really like that. Now of course having those colors is important, but what does a color palette look like? Let's jump into that. So here we have an example of their color palette. They're using their main 3 primary colors. So we have the blue, the white and the yellow. That is really important, that's the main part of the brand. But as soon as we scroll down, we can also see the secondary colors. So it's good to have multiple colors in your palette that you can make some variations to it. What I really like about this one is, for example, to have a waterfall effect. So if you have all the tones of blue, you could easily use this in hierarchy, in charts, or in designs, and stick to that branding aspect, stick to that color, but have some gradient palette for it. So I think that's really, really nice. And here you can also see some examples of how to use and invert the colors. If you choose a brand color, just make sure it always contrasts. There's a high contrast in the letters, the background, so it's not hard to read. And I think they did that really well here. Whereas sometimes you see those pitfalls. And if you scroll down, I think they give some examples. We can see that even though they use the primary colors in this example, it totally does not feel about the brand. So even if you use your primary colors, you want to use them in the right combination to stick to the brand and to stick to that topic. So same example here, this feels like Facebook more than it does feel like Walmart, and even though it says Walmart. Now, which brings us to the third part, which is the typography. And Walmart uses a font called Everyday Sans, which is their own font family that they've designed as an extension of their logo or wordmark. And this Everyday Sans font is a very friendly, modern font with a lot of weights and styles. And I think that is crucial in your design. That's because you can create a lot of hierarchy in your designs. Now, let's have a look at how they use it. So here we can, for example, see the typography. And if we scroll down, we can see that there's a section where they have a lot of the font families listed up. Here we go. There's a typesetting cheat sheet. So what they've done is they've set a type for each of the styles. So there's a headline, extra large headline, normal headline, subhead, inline header, body copy, captions, etc. Now what I like and what a lot of people do is they go for the boldest font. They will make it the extra large headline. Then they go for a little bit lighter, they go for the headline, and all the way down until the captions. Now what they've done here is they sort of inversed it. So if you look at the headline itself, it's a light version of their font. So the extra large headline is a thinner font than the headline. The headline itself, it's medium, same with subhead, but the inline header then, so already the fourth level, that is the bold font. And go down, here we see regular again, and then we go to the regular and light versions. So what I like about this one is that it doesn't follow that standard pattern. It brings some variety, but also if you reduce the font size and make the font bolder, there's less of a harsh contrast. And if you use like the black font for all your headers, and then you go to a subheader, which is 2 levels lower and also a lot smaller, the contrast will be so large. So that's why I kind of like how they approach this in their typography here. Now, besides fonts and logos, there's also something really important, which is the visual identity. And there, I think they've also done a fantastic job. And for the visual identity, we're looking at the different elements that they use. And at Walmart, I think they call it Brand OS. So if we look into that, we can see that they use a lot of frames. And what are those frames? Those are, as I mentioned here, the flexible, versatile containers. So it's those sort of things. If you have a frame in your design, here on the outline, we can also see it. So that is a frame that contains a lot of the elements. Here we can see 3 frames, and they have put a very specific guideline of the radius. So we can see the corner radius is very important in this design. This is too small, this is just right, and this is too large. So they've selected a type of radius which fits their brand, and they use it consistently. And by using this corner, so if you see this corner, perfectly matches up with this corner, or the same radius amount, which is great. I think here they determined how much of a radius they used. I think they do the X value divided by 15, and for a standard presentation it gives a presentation radius or a corner radius of 30 pixels. So if you want to have some instruction on that, you can always read through it. But I like that they use a standard corner rounding throughout all their materials, which gives a very consistent look and feel. And another thing that I really like going through this is the frame behaviors, they call it. And this is something which you can use for a lot of your designs. They use it in 3 parts. First, they use windows, which is basically an image placeholder, but in that image, they use that corner rounding. So you have the roundness in the corner on your images, but also the boxes next to it or the larger design elements. So that's pretty neat. And secondly, they use it as a tile. And I haven't thought of it yet, but if you have, for example, pictures with PNGs or transparent backgrounds, then it sometimes looks weird if you put a picture which hasn't a transparent background and then one that has, and then again without. It doesn't really match because it doesn't give that same frame around it. So that's why they use it as a tile. to make sure that, look at those 3 boxes, they neatly match up, even though this one doesn't have any background. So they use it as a tile, and I kind of like that. Also that overlapping part, it's a design touch, but really, really well done. And the third part is to outline or focal point. They want to put a focal point on the design. So in a regular picture, they want to highlight a specific part. They can use it with that same corner radius. So different ways to use that, and I think it really works really well. Here we can see a poster without the radius, and then ones with the radius. So it works well in their designs, and I think it's a very good choice with the modern look and feel that a lot of people are going for right now. And we can see this aesthetic going through in their entire website, also their materials, their posters, their designs, so it's pretty consistent. Overall, I think that adds for a very minimalistic style of your brand and of the design choices, so aesthetically very pleasing. And that brings us to the last part, which is the illustrations that they use. And for this, in the package, they have added a lot of illustrations in the new consistent style. So you can see that even in store, those can be used on walls, they can be used on packaging, on branding. It's pretty neat, and it does match all of the boxes that we tick, like the logo, the colors, the hierarchy. It really fits well together. So I think it's an eye-catching visual that they can use in stores to get people familiar with the brand and also add for a very modern, clean, nice atmosphere. Now overall, I really like this brand refresh, but I get it why people say that they don't see too much of a change, but I like that they stick to their core values. Overall, it remains Walmart, so they should stick to their brand values. As a closure, and a quote that I think fits this really well is one from Ron Jeffries, where he says, "Simple, not easy. There's a difference."